Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Ice Cold Takes podcast. I am your host, Joe DiMeglio, and the New York Rangers have gotten off to a good start in the 2024 playoffs, winning games 1 and 2 at Madison Square Garden. The series is far from over, though, as we've seen in previous playoff runs by the Rangers, and we have a lot to discuss from the first two games. Joining me is our pal, reporter Colin Stephenson. Colin, thanks for taking some time to be here. I appreciate you being here. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. It's as we were chatting before we started recording, I was just I slept in a little bit, got some laundry done, doing in the washer, and then I was able to watch a little bit of the game last night. I like to, when I get a chance. I don't always get a chance, but if I do, I'd like to kind of rewatch some of what happened and sort of see if there's anything I missed, which, there's a lot you miss when you're trying to write on deadline. But, so just got a chance to look at some of that stuff and see if there's anything new that I need to investigate today.
Yeah. When you write the stories, it's like you always have to be wary of if a game takes a dramatic turn. Like you have pretty much the 85% of your story done, and then you just got to get quotes to fill in the blanks. And then like all of a sudden something like the game just completely flip-flops. That's got to be so stressful.
We root for, at least, well, I won't speak for anyone else, but I root for a 4-1 or a 5-1 game every night. The last thing you want is a 1-goal game where anything can change on one shot, it can change a whole game. So it's a game like that last night was, it's an interesting, I should say interesting. It's an exciting game for the fans. It's not maybe the prettiest game, but a 1-goal game is always a great thing in playoffs, and you're on the edge of your seat, and especially those last couple minutes were really crazy.
Mm-hmm. I certainly thought game 2 was a lot more entertaining than game 1. I don't know about you.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, a 1-goal game is a lot better from an entertainment perspective than a 4-1 game, a day game where I'm less stressed about making my nighttime deadline. But no, it was, as I said, not the prettiest of games, a lot of hits and a lot of snarl and some, as Jacob Trouba was saying, a lot of chipping it in and chipping it out and them chipping it in and us trying to break out. A battle of breakouts, I think is what he called it. So not exactly the most beautiful game, but I tell you what, that Keandre Miller goal was something to see, right? So yeah. there is beauty within, an ugly game even.
Yeah, so let's get into it, like recapping the game. So you watch as much as anybody, like you're physically at each of the games, like you're at as many of the games as you possibly can be, just to report and write your stories. But like, how are the Rangers played in your eyes through 2 games? Like, I don't think they're at their best, but like, how do they match up to where they are usually at this compete level?
I think it's been good for them. I think they've gotten everything that you would have wanted them to get. Look, I had this running discussion with Mika. Not a running discussion. I want to make it more than it is, but I've talked to him about it a couple times about this. People criticize them that they don't do enough at 5-on-5, right? They're basically a break-even team at 5-on-5, and most of their wins come because they have better special teams than the other team. They've got the 3rd best power play in the league. They've got the 3rd best penalty kill in the league. So, I mean, so their formula for a lot of the season was play even at 5-on-5 and win the game on the penalty kill or the power play. And I think, that's a narrative that kind of gets to be annoying for the players at times to have to answer it. Why aren't you guys better at 5-on-5? So anyway, the point being, in game 1, they scored 4 goals and everything was 5-on-5, so they got that, and they got kind of that put to bed. And then Mika was laughing, when I was talking to him at the morning skate, he was like, yeah, so we score all these 5-on-5 goals, and now people are mad that we don't score a power play goal. So the power play is not good. And then, so then they scored 2 power play goals in game 2. So I think that they've gotten what they needed to get. They've gotten some goals at even strength. They knew the Capitals were going to try and be physical and try and dirty up the game and muck up the game. and they've matched Capitals' physicality. I mean, if you look in both of the games, they have actually landed, according to the statistics, more hits than has Washington. There hasn't been a fight yet. Tom Wilson has run around, and TJ Oshie was, I think a little bit overly physical, I think, with Artemi Panarin in game 2. But the Rangers have not sort of lost control of their emotions. I mean, they've kind of, remember game 1, I mean, Wilson knocked Mika down a couple times. I know Mika looked at the ref one time like, what was that? Wasn't that late kind of thing? But the Rangers didn't get caught up in that. You remember Dylan McElrath bumped into Rempe, trying to start something, and Rempe just backed up. I mean, so they haven't gotten caught up in the nonsense, but yet in the physical game that they are out hitting Washington in the first 2 games. So they've played the games that they've needed to play. They won a pretty game in game 1. They won an ugly game in game 2. They've had 5-on-5 goals. They've had special teams goals. The only thing they haven't had yet, and it's only 2 games in, is they haven't had Igor steal a game for them, right? Mm-hmm. But 2 games in, and they're playing against a team that they're better than. So right now, I think they're doing what they need to do, and I think what they need to do next is just finish this series early. Because if you want to go on a long run, remember 2 years ago, everything went 7, right? I mean, the first round series went 7. The second round series went 7. They literally played, I don't know how, I forget whatever the math was. They played
20 games in 40 days, I think.
Right. They played every other game, every other day. So, I mean, they played a lot of games over that 40 days, 20 games over 40 days. So I think, the next task for them in this series, you are better than Washington. There's no question about that. You are heavily favored to win. There's no question about that. So win in the fewest amount of games possible. Get yourself a couple days off and save your legs for the next round.
Mm-hmm. You brought up how Mika was talking about like the criticisms of 5-on-5 play. I'm wondering, do the rest of the players in the room seem frustrated or take it personally about all the discussion that they can't get it done at even strength, or they're, just a break-even team? Do they take that personally?
I think they're a little sensitive about it, yeah. But they have a great power play. You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
They have a great power play, and this is a weapon that they have that helps them win games. And at the end of the day, it's about winning games. Now, people obviously use 5-on-5 as a barometer to say, well, maybe they're not really that good. And, that's fair. Whatever people think is their own opinion, and that's fine. They did have 55 wins. They did win the President's Trophy. So I think people are sleeping on them a little bit, and it's probably mostly because of their lack of dominance at 5-on-5. And, but, they won a lot of games in the regular season. They were 8-1 in overtime. Well, that's 3-on-3, right? In the playoffs, there is no 3-on-3. There is no shootout. So, 5-on-5 is a much bigger deal in the playoffs than it has to be in the regular season. So, I mean, I think that's reasonable, but I think the way I would look at it, and I'm sure the way the Rangers look at it, is that, they did what they needed to do to win games. And I think that's kind of what they've done so far in these 2 games against Washington. Well, the first game, I think, they won that one pretty easily, but the second game certainly was less easy. They knew Washington was going to come hard. Washington came hard. They scored the first goal, and and the Rangers had to do what they had to do. They had to muck it up, and they had to, when Tom Wilson scored that power play goal with 8:15 left, they had to protect the lead for the last 8 minutes and 15 seconds, including the last 2 minutes and change, of 5-on-6. So, I think they're in a good position. They've got a couple days in between games now. I mean, game 2 was on Tuesday. Game 3 is on Friday. So they've got, today is Wednesday as we speak, and the team is off today. They'll go back to practice on Thursday and then travel to Washington. So, I mean, I think they're in a good place. And they do seem to be focused. They seem to be, like all business right now. Like they're just into whatever they need to be into at the moment, and they're not letting their minds wander to what's up next round, and maybe we're going to be playing Carolina in the next round. They're not thinking about any of that. They're thinking about game 3.
Mm-hmm. So Mika Zibanejad seems to have flipped the switch since the playoffs started. I mean, I'm one of many who criticized him during the regular season, whether that be for lack of shooting or just the lack of 5-on-5 offense. But he looks like he's on top of his game. Do you feel that as well?
I do, yeah, definitely. I think he was a force in game 1. He had the assist on the Kreider goal that made it 4-1. It was a really, really pretty pass up the middle. That's one of those chemistry things, and he's played with Kreider so long that everybody knows he certainly does. As soon as he gets the puck there in the defensive zone, he knows Kreider is instantly going to be breaking up the middle, and he puts a pass right on his tape. So, that's the thing that we notice. But I mean, it's just the other stuff that he does. I mean, he checks and he wins faceoffs, and he's had a strong 2 games. And I talked to him at the morning skate before game 2, and he acknowledged that it points wise it hasn't been his best season. But yeah, and the whole thing, they couldn't find a right wing, right? First it was Kakko, and that didn't work. And then it was Wheeler, and that was kind of lukewarm. And then he tried Kakko again, and then Wheeler again. And then Wheeler got hurt, and then he traded for Roslovic. And I don't know how well that's working. And some of that is probably due to, some of that is probably the responsibility of Mika and Kreider. Some of that is, the third guy hasn't necessarily been able to keep up with them. Whatever it is. Mika, 26 goals and 72 points. That's a lot less than we expect from him. So, and he knows it, but the playoffs is a different thing. And if now teams in the playoffs are going to focus on Panarin, then that may open some things up. For instance, if they go to the next round and they do play Carolina, who would you expect Jordan Staal to be up against? Is he going to be up against Mika, or is he up against Trocheck? So, if that's in fact the case, then then may open things up a little bit for Mika, and maybe Mika can have a stronger postseason.
Mm-hmm. You mentioned that the Rangers look focused and wanting to get this series wrapped up, but Tom Wilson has been running around,
He's running around,
doing whatever he can to give his team an edge. That's the type of player he is. We all know it. We all know what to expect.
That's why everybody who plays with him loves him, and everybody who plays against him hates him.
Yeah, it's a fine line there. But do you sense any frustration from the Rangers with how physical they've been, or how the Capitals have been, or do they come to expect it and push back harder? Is that what you're sensing?
Yeah. I think that they absolutely were expecting the Capitals to be physical. They know that Tom Wilson's on that team. They expect Tom Wilson to do Tom Wilson things. And I think they have the physicality to match up. I mean, look, Will Cooley idolizes Tom Wilson, right? I mean, the day he was drafted by the Rangers, he talked about wanting to be the next Tom Wilson, or not wanting to be the next Tom Wilson, but modeling his game after Tom Wilson. Every young power forward coming up models his game after Tom Wilson. Rempe, a guy who comes into the league and establishes himself as a fighter, and then starts to show you that he can play a little bit, and now he's a good player, right? And that's what they all aspire to be. I mean, Will Cooley certainly does, Rempe does, but they have guys that aren't afraid of Tom Wilson. That you remember, was it 3 years ago when Tom Wilson did what he did to Panarin, and he ragdolled them and slammed them down, body slammed them, a helmetless Panarin. I mean, I feared for Panarin's safety in that moment. I think that Wilson kind of lost his mind a little bit. The Rangers didn't have anybody on the roster at that time that could challenge Tom Wilson and say, hey, cut the crap. Mm-hmm. And they have now guys that are not afraid of Tom Wilson. Yes, Tom Wilson might be 6'5", but you know what? Will Cooley's 6'3" and 200-something pounds. He's not intimidated. Rempe's 6'8". These guys are not intimidated by Tom Wilson. You know what I mean? And even Barclay Goodrow was barking, pardon the pun, at Wilson in game 1. So they're not bothered. They're not intimidated by Tom Wilson. As long as Tom Wilson, if Tom Wilson does what he's doing now, which is, running into scrums, and which is, putting shoulders into people's chests legally, that's fine. I think they're okay with it. I asked a couple of people about the physicality at Mondays. Sort of, they didn't practice, but they had an availability. They had the players there for meetings and such, and we were able to talk to some players. And I asked a couple guys about the physicality, and Eric Gustafson, of all people, surprised me because he's not the most physical guy, as we know, but he said he likes it because he says the physicality, fires him up too. So I think that's the way the Rangers are looking at it. They're not bothered by this. They expect it, and they have players who can respond in kind. So I think that they've really taken that off the table as something that could be a problem.
Mm-hmm. I was absolutely shocked to see Panarin throw that hit on Oshie, and Valaket in the postgame said that was an on the line hit. Did you get to speak to Panarin at all after the
No,
game last night, or?
no, we didn't. We didn't get to speak to him. But I know that the Capitals were not happy with it. I mean, the first question to Spencer Carberry was regarding that hit, and why, whether Carberry got an explanation as to why that wasn't a penalty. And Carberry said that what the ref told him is like they reviewed it to see if it was a major penalty. Like if it was a shoulder to the head, then that's a 5 in a game. So that's what they reviewed it for. Since it's not 5 in a game, they deem that it's not a roughing penalty, or it's a regular play. So yes, is it a borderline hit? It maybe, but given what Oshie was doing to Panarin in the game, I think it's Panarin standing up for himself and letting him know that, hey, I'm not going to take that. I mean, you remember there was the one play where Oshie got his stick up and whacked Panarin in the eye shield, in the visor. No, and knocked him down. No call. That should have been a high stick, right? No call. There was another play where Oshie, there was a dispute. There was some sort of a scrum between two other players, and Oshie just comes up from behind Panarin and wraps his arm around Panarin's neck. No call. So, Panarin was, I think, letting Oshie know in his own way that, I'm not standing for it, and I'm going to stand up for myself. And I think, that's the way I saw it anyway. And no, we didn't get to ask Panarin about it, but that's the way I saw it. And I think that's, Trocheck was asked about the physicality of his line, which would be, Panarin and Lafreniere. We know Trocheck to be a physical player. We don't know Panarin to be a physical player, but and his take on it was, when you see guys like that, meaning Panarin, playing physical, then that you have no excuse to not play physical. So, it's good for the Rangers all around as long as nobody gets hurt.
Right. And Lafreniere has also been physical too so far in this series. I'll get to that, but I mean, you brought up the officiating. I got to talk about it. It just, I don't know what's going on, what you feel, how you feel about it, how everybody else feels about it. It just seems like all of these calls are so ticky-tacky and like for both sides. And me personally, I almost feel like I wouldn't call any of them aside from like maybe 3 or 4, like 2 apiece for like each team across both games. Like some of these, like the Rempe roughing one, like, yeah, okay, like technically it's a roughing call, but I mean, it's the playoffs and usually they let that stuff slide. I'm very surprised of how tightly they're calling these games.
I agree. I agree in both games that the calls have been ticky-tack to a large extent. 11 minor penalties in game 2, 11 power plays, 6 for the Rangers, 5 for Washington. One was was Gustafson shooting the puck over the glass, so that's an automatic. So the other 5,
too many men.
Yeah, and the too many men, right? So those are 2 automatics. So 9 of the 11 penalties the referee had to make a call, and there were calls that they didn't make. And officiate. I try and stay away from writing about the officiating or talking too much about the officiating because the officials are human too, and they are going to miss a call. There's going to be stuff that happens that they simply don't see. And what I don't want is for a guy to not see something and then the Garden shows the replay up on the board, and the guy says, "Oh, I missed it," and then he calls, some sort of a makeup call in the next play. I don't want that. I mean, just call what you see, and make sure it's legit. And if you miss a call, you miss a call, and we all just have to live with it. But yes, some of that stuff has been really, really ticky tack. I mean, the two on Rempe, I think, have been, one in game one and one in game two, have both been, I don't know. You could have totally let either of those go, and both of them ended up in a power play goal. No, that's not true. The one in game two ended up as a power play goal. So it's a dangerous, it's not dangerous. I take that back. It's a significant thing to call a penalty, especially when it's a borderline penalty. And then if you're going to call it one on Rempe and then you allow, Tom Wilson in game one to drop Mika behind the net when, the puck is already gone, you're going to let that go, but you're going to call Rempe for, I don't know, boarding or charging or roughing or whatever it was in that game. And then in game two, you're going to call Rempe for roughing on that play, but then you're going to let Panarin get, he hits Oshie and whatever you think of it. I mean, that's borderline too, but you let that one go. So I don't really get into it. And after a point, you say, geez, there's been 10 penalties. I don't think I can call the next one. I got to let it, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, you get into a lot of trouble if you're thinking that way. I want them to just call penalties that are penalties and don't call them a penalty if it's not a penalty. That's all I want.
Right. Like it's been really inconsistent. You look at in game two, the Rangers were on a power play and Kreider cross-checked, I think it was either Van Riemsdyk or Fair. Yeah. And then Milano later in the game is same thing on Trouba. He cross-checks Trouba, no call. Same exact thing. Trouba didn't like sell it or anything, but Milano still hit him in the back. Like, that's a cross-check.
Yeah, that's part of it too. Is maybe the Caps are going down a little easy, and but that's part of the game too. I don't mind that. There is a penalty for embellishment, so again, that's on the referee. If Kreider cross-checks Van Riemsdyk and Van Riemsdyk goes down, and you call that a cross-checking penalty, and then Milano cross-checks Trouba and Trouba doesn't go down, I don't know what we're supposed to do with that. I mean, so I do think that the officiating has to be better, has to be more consistent. Players got to know what is and is not a foul. But again, I don't think it has affected the outcome of either game. So ultimately, if it's not affecting the outcome of the game, then I'm not necessarily going to worry about it too much.
Mm-hmm. And also another thing to take note of is, you said the referees are human too, but like the players also have to consider, staying focused in playoffs like this. It would probably almost feel like they're working against two things at the same time. Like you could make the argument both the Rangers and the Capitals feel that way with how the officials have called stuff, haven't called stuff. So, just dealing with that, staying focused through it all has got to be so difficult. And to get back to what I was going to say before about Lafreniere, in game one, it's almost like it was very subtle, but you almost noticed like a killer instinct mentality that I haven't seen from the Rangers. Like on that second goal in game one from Panarin, Lafreniere throws in a very clean, hard, shoulder-to-shoulder hit on Iorio.
Right.
Gets the puck. He gets it. I think he got it to Trocheck, who got it to Panarin, and Panarin scored. Right. But like that wouldn't have happened if they had thought like, all right, let me not hit as hard because the refs are going to call a penalty. Like, no, let me go all out. And despite the officiating, and let me just play my game and think like, okay, the rules won't apply to me. Let me just go all out. Do you notice that a little bit too from the Rangers? I don't know if we saw it at all in game two, but I definitely saw splashes of it in game one, that killer instinct mentality.
Well, I think in this case, I think what you're talking about is them just playing the game the way they're supposed to play the game, right? And not worrying about the officials. I mean, you at the end of the day, you can't be afraid to body check somebody because you think it might be a foul. I mean, you know what is and what is not a foul. And if you body check somebody and the referee deems it to be a roughing or an elbowing or something, and the referee calls it and it's a bad call, then you know what, it's too bad and it's a bad call. But you can't allow that to change the way you play. And I think the Rangers, and it goes back to the talking about their focus. They are focused on themselves. They are focused on how they need to play. They need to be physical. They need to be fast. They need to get pucks behind people. They need to, do all those things that everybody does, get traffic in front of net, all that kind of stuff. And they can't worry about the officiating as another variable. They've just got to play their game. Now, it also helps to know that you've got an excellent penalty kill and an excellent goalie. So if you do hit somebody on the borderline and it gets called as a foul, you got a really good chance that you're going to kill that penalty. I mean, they were perfect in game one. They gave up 2 power play goals in game 2, but they got a shorty. So, they're really only -1. So, I mean, that does help you if you know your penalty kill is good to have the confidence to play physically, because then you know that even if I do take a penalty, we got a chance to kill it anyway.
Mm-hmm. Couple last things for you before I let you go. How much of an impact did do you think that the conditioning, like all the drills they've done in practice from the start of the year to now, how much did that play into those last 3 minutes last night where they were just chasing the puck and couldn't get it clear?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it has something to do with it. But the schedule also worked out for them too. So I mean, you can't. I can't not point to that as a contributor as well. I mean, they played their final regular season game on Monday, and then they didn't play their playoff game until the game 1 until Sunday. So they had all that time in between. They had a couple days off, Tuesday and Wednesday. They had a couple hard practices Thursday and Friday, a lighter practice on Saturday. Played the game Sunday. It was a relatively easy game. Didn't skate on Monday. So I mean, like they've yes, they did a lot of hard work putting in conditioning back in training camp and in the early part of the season. But this guy's been around, and this guy being Peter Laviolette, the coach, has been around for 20 years. He's coached a bunch of teams. Like, he's got a good sense of when to work them hard and when to not work them hard. And I think that he's done a good job as far as that is concerned. So yeah, I think that they're in good shape. And I just want to make this point too. You talk about conditioning. They're healthy. I remember Jacob Trouba missed, 10, 11 games or something like that with a lower body injury. And I know people were mad at him when he came back that he wasn't great. And, people on Twitter were like, this guy's terrible. He's the worst defenseman in the history of hockey. And now, he seems to have played his way back into shape and he's looking just fine. And everybody's looking just fine. I mean, Adam Fox had an injury that he missed a month, missed 10 games. And when he came back, he struggled a little bit for it seemed like an extended period of time, but he closed the season strong. He's fine. They're healthy and they're in good condition, as you point out, and they are focused on getting the job done regardless of what it takes. And, you mentioned Alex Wenberg earlier. He's out there, and he's such a smart player. He's out there in that 5-on-6 at the end. And with seconds to go, he gets the puck behind the net and just kind of like covers it up on the boards and lets up the clock. So they have smart guys. They're in shape. They have smart guys, and they're focused. And I think that I think they're in good position. They're just doing everything right now.
Mm-hmm. Last thing here before we wrap it up, we have to do the ice cold take segment. So, Colin, a reminder for you. The ice cold take, the staple of the show here. It's an accurate statement backed by facts and observations that is solid in nature, similar to a block of ice, i.e. a spot-on claim. I saw someone call that Rempe was gonna get the first goal on in game one.
Wasn't
That was
me.
no, no. Um, I mean, for me, I'll go first here, give you a little bit more time to think about it. But I think if the big game here is game three, if the Rangers could take game three, they could. Expect them to win game four. But if they lose game three, it's coming back to the Garden for like. I think the Rangers can wrap it up in five, if that makes sense. Like this is a huge.
How is that a nice cold take?
I don't know. It's soft. It's soft.
Come on, man. You gotta come
I
stronger than
know.
me. No, they are they're focused on winning game three. They are. And I just think that Laviolette's been able to get them to buy into just play this game, and don't worry about the next game. So they're focused on game three, and I don't disagree with you that game three is a big game. And I don't disagree with you with your point being that if they win game three, that they probably will sweep the series. They'll win game four. But yeah, come on. Like if they lose game three, they're gonna win, they're gonna win in five. So what, I don't know. I don't know. I
I've
don't know
been
where you're
hurt.
going.
I've been hurt. The Rangers last two playoff series they've played, they've blown 2-0 leads.
Yes, no,
It
that's
looked
true.
like they were gonna wrap it up,
Yeah.
like especially last season. It was like, oh, we're gonna beat the Devils in five.
Yeah, no,
And
that's true. That's definitely true. But I will say this: that in those last two playoff series, um, first of all, the Devils were an awful matchup for them. They just, throughout the regular season, you could see it that the Devils were just a bad matchup for them. I mean, they would have been fine against any other team except the Devils in the first round last year. And then 2 years ago against Tampa Bay, well, Tampa Bay was better than them. So yes, they rolled into that one and they won the first two games at the Garden, and it was great. And then Tampa Bay kind of woke up and they were the better team. That is not the case here. Washington is not a better team than the Rangers. I do not see Washington winning 4 of the next 5 games and stunning the Rangers. No, I think the Rangers will win this series. And, I predicted, in the newspaper that they would win in 4, and I'm going to stick with that. I'm going to say that they're going to sweep. Is that a nice cool take?
that's good. I like that. I like that. That's fine. Stick to what you had before. I said Rangers in 5 just because I don't
Yeah,
know.
because
Like the
nobody
Rangers
wants to
have
pick the sweep, right? You always
yeah,
want to give yourself a little wiggle room. Nah,
yeah,
man, come on.
yeah.
These guys are, good for them that they made the playoffs, but come on.
To give like a better ice cold take, because that one was just kind of like that was the first thing that came to my head, the one that I said about winning game three. I'll say that if the Rangers win the series, I mean, like which we're expecting, Panarin's gonna have the series clinching goal. I don't
All
know if
right,
it's
that's
gonna be in
good.
overtime, but it's gonna be the game. His goal is gonna be the game winner,
You get the
and
game winner in game
Capitals
4.
Capitals fans are gonna be not gonna be happy. I'll say game 4. I'll say the Rangers are gonna come away with the win in game 3 on Friday, and then wrap it up in game 4.
All right.
No,
I don't know if
move
this
on
is
to
I don't know that this is a prediction, but this is something that I think I'd like to see. Uh, I think Tom Wilson is going to fight somebody, and I think it's either going to be Rempe or it's going to be Cooley. Right?
Ooh,
One of them two
yeah,
guys
I
is
could
going to want to fight him, right? I mean, come on. How are you going to be Matt Rempe and play against Tom Wilson and not fight him?
yeah. I know McElrath didn't want to fight Rempe. He said he would have backed away too if it were him. I think
They,
that's what he's something
I
along
don't
those.
know. They fought in the minor leagues. I
Yeah.
saw that fight actually. I looked it up on Hockey Fights, and it was a pretty good fight actually. So I don't, like I think the Tom Wilson intimidating teams thing. He can be an intimidating guy, but the Rangers are not intimidated by this guy, and I think that Rempe's playing it cool, and they give him and Laviolette says he gives him instructions every game, and there's a game plan, and he tells him. But I wouldn't be surprised if in game 4 or if in game 3, if the game's out of hand, that Tom Wilson's going to want to fight somebody, and I would say that Rempe or Cooley is the most likely.
I'm with you on that. I could see it being like if the Rangers are up at the end of game 3,
Yeah.
he's running around, Wilson is, and, he'll try and fight someone, but the refs will stop it before it happens, and it'll boil over to game 4 where I think it'll happen in game 4 if there's gonna be a fight there, you know?
Yeah, which would be good. I mean,
Yeah.
and listen, Rempe's a good fighter, but it's not like he's an unbeatable fighter. I mean, he's lost some fights. I mean, he's won some and he's lost some. But he is a big, big man. I think what happens to him is that he'll go for a while and he'll throw for. He fought Reeves, right? Like, and he'll go for a while and throw for a while, and after a while, he just kind of gets tired.
Mhm.
He just punches himself out, and then the other guy, if the other guy is a veteran guy with stamina, then the other guy can win the fight at the end. But he's still learning. He's 21 years old, and he's still sort of learning this fight game, and I think he's going to want a piece of Tom Wilson at some point in the series.
Yeah. And that fight against McDermott, that was a marathon. That one went on for over a minute. That's a long, long
Yeah,
hockey fight.
yeah. So he's getting better. His
Yeah.
stamina's getting better, right? And he's
Yeah.
playing more too. Did you notice that? I mean, like,
Yes, he has been playing a lot more. I like to see that. Like, he was getting what was he getting before? It was like, I feel like less than
he was
5
averaging like
minutes.
5.5 minutes a game. Although that's he got ejected from 3 Devils games, so that brought it down. One game he played 2 seconds, and in another game he got thrown out on his first or second shift. So that kind of brought the average down. But 5.5 minutes, nevertheless, is 5.5 minutes, and I think he played 8 minutes and change in the first game, and 7.5 minutes in game 2. So. But it seemed like he's obviously he's noticeable when he's out there, but it seemed like he got quite a few shifts in the first period of game 2, and I think if there's trouble, he'll get even more.
Yeah, and that fourth line has been looking pretty good so far, which, I didn't expect that. I think that's gonna be very helpful for the Rangers moving forward if they could keep up that momentum, if the fourth line can keep playing the way that they've been playing through the first 2 games of the playoffs. Barclay Goodrow for sure. Uh I know he faced a lot of criticism this season, but it's nice to see him, you know, fitting in so nicely with that playoff style.
It's funny. Like, so my kids play lacrosse, as you know,
Yep.
and Barclay Goodrow reminds me of that defensive midi in lacrosse, right? Like he had what he had 4 goals in the regular season. So he doesn't score goals, but that's not his job really. I mean, yes, you'd like him to chip in a goal now and again, but he does so many other things. I didn't look at the final stats last night in terms of faceoffs, but the one point I looked, he had won 7 of 9. So you throw him out there for a defensive zone faceoff against a top line, he wins the draw. They get it out of the zone. So I mean, like, he does that kind of thing. He's just not going to score goals. And he had perfect. In game 2 last night, wasn't the one where Charlie Lindgren makes the mistake and he whiffs on the shot and it goes right to Goodrow, and Goodrow bangs at it, and Lindgren makes the save. He couldn't score from 4 feet away. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So like that is a thing that drives people crazy. Drives fans crazy. But if you look at what he does do, he does it really well. I mean, he's a strong face-off guy. He's a guy who can check, and he's not going to give up too many goals. When he's on the ice. So he's been good for them, and he's been and I think people will notice that more so in the playoffs than maybe they did in the regular season.
Mhm. Yeah, and I didn't even notice this on the goal in, game 1, the face-off play. He did the Benino where he
Oh
turned
yeah,
the stick over. I didn't notice it until after game 1.
yeah, yeah. He's the one. So when I noticed that with Benino when in training camp that he would flip the stick over, and I talked to him about it. And it's something that he'd been doing for years, obviously, and a couple of guys did do that, pick that up from him on the Rangers this year, and Goodrow was one of them. So
Mhm.
yeah, it's a technique that he uses at times, and it worked out on that play.
Yeah. I remember in the beginning of the season, like, maybe the first month or 2, the broadcasts were picking up on it, and they kept pointing it out that Benino does it in practice, and that it's rubbed off on the Rangers, and then I just completely forgot about it. Like after November, December, I completely forgot about
Yeah,
it.
once Danilo was gone, you're
Yeah,
like, let's stop talking about it.
yeah. I completely forgot about it. It's nice to see that it's still paying off here. Like it's almost like how Zibanejad on the penalty kill. Every now and then, off the face-off, you'll just shoot it right down the ice
Yeah,
instead of winning it back.
yeah,
Tries
yeah.
to
I mean,
catch
it's there's
their opponent with their head down for just a second.
yeah, there's these guys that do take faceoffs. There are multiple techniques, and again, as a lacrosse dad, I'm very into like faceoffs and defensive middies and things like that. So those are the details of the game that most people don't invest a lot of time in paying attention to, but they're key parts of the game that can help you win.
Yep. All right, Colin. Well, I appreciate you coming on to do this with me, taking some time to do the podcast. I know I told you 15 minutes. Of course, it went to 41 minutes.
No, we have too much time. I can't be worried about that. As long as
Yeah,
I got no place to go. There's no practice today, so I'm
yeah.
good.
For your sake, I hope that games 3 and 4 are smooth and it's not like a direct change like at the last minute, so that the
No, we don't
story's
need all
easy. And
that. I don't.
for the Rangers, I just hope that they wrap this series up here. Like let's get it over with, please. I'm still stressed from the last 2 years. It's
Yeah, you
not
know
good.
what? I mean, if pace yourself. Hopefully, they're going to go deep.
Yep. All right. We hope so. We hope so. All right. Well, we're gonna end the stream here. Ice Cold Takes fans. We'll see you guys next week.